Hey YouTubers, I was wondering if you noticed the same thing I have. Well, I'm pretty sure you probably have. Over the last year or so, the 2012 hysteria has sort of died down, and basically I've seen a noticeable decrease in prepper activity on YouTube and other places. And I just wanted to suggest that maybe you might not want to go to sleep yet. I think everybody knows or has a pretty good idea that that the people who really run the country and most of the world, basically what happens is they ease up on the economy, and then the economy tends to grow a little bit, kind of like when you have an engine, right, or a clutch. Those of you who know how to drive a clutch. But anyway, you're riding along, right, and then you're about to kill the engine, so what do? You let up on the clutch, maybe, and give it a little bit of fuel, and then the engine revs back up again. Then you slam on the clutch and put it back to work and start pulling productivity out of the system to for your own ends, whatever you want. You know, so that's what the super wealthy people are doing, right? So right now we seem to be in a position where they're easing up a little bit in spite of all the drag factors the economy has on it, and all of the wars and all this basically, and all the outsourcing. A little bit of leeway is starting to creep back into the system, and interest rates are, of course, like on the ground cheap. That's why I'm kind of thinking, I mean, I've got qualified for a loan, and I'm getting real close to making my move. I'm shopping for houses, shopping for property, looking at it from a permaculture eye, and for the proximity to work, because I and a lot of people think that we got some high gas prices coming. Even though the gas is really cheap right now, I think it is definitely going up. What's happening is they're easing up on the gas prices and everything too, and then people are going to start buying SUVs again. Now, who am I to talk? I have a giant pickup truck, but I don't really commute with it. So basically, I would just sort of urge everybody to keep in the prepper mindset, although I'm sure most of my subscribers are, and sort of prep for the long haul, not an imminent collapse. I mean, all of this 2012 stuff was really hyped up in the media. That movie came out where the whole world had a pole shift, and people were starting to think, oh my goodness, and then buying Mountain House, right? Now, it's quite probable that some new preppers are going to have a whole garage full of Mountain House, and a whole pallet full of things, and a brand new generator that they've never started. And then after, or toward the end of 2012, or possibly right about now, they might start feeling a little bit self-conscious, and they might start thinking, oh man, I made a mistake, and then they fall out of prepping. Now, this is what Jack Spirko said on the Survival Podcast about a couple of years ago, and he's definitely right. I bet a lot of people right about now are starting to fall out of the prepper movement and sort of go kind of yawn and stretch and go back to sleep, right? Well, that's exactly what they want you to do, and that's exactly what you shouldn't do, but you all know that, of course. Now, I have decreased my prepper videos, and I've had a few other interests, and it's fairly normal to have other interests as well as prepping. Actually, it's more normal than just prepping all the time. So basically, I've been doing a few hobbies, and I've been getting set for like high gas prices without electric bicycle and whatnot. But a lot of people might start buying, SUVs and vacation homes again if they can afford it. But I would highly urge everybody not to. Basically, I'm all qualified for a loan, and I've got some savings to put down now, and I'm getting real close to buying my place. I'm looking for places. I went to look at a place last weekend, and I'm really keeping my eyes open now. And what I want is a house with a half acre, maybe an acre, and I want it someplace where it has like a south-facing wall that isn't blocked by a bunch of trees or hills, and I want to build a greenhouse on it. Now, I'm in a situation where this condo is paid off, which is great, but the value of this condo has dropped even from the price I paid for it back in 1997. 1997, I paid $73,000 for this place, and now, most recently, we've had a foreclosure with basically this exact same 2-bedroom, 1 3/4 bath, 975 square foot unit sold for $60,000. So that's probably market right about now. So now I'm faced with a conundrum. Should I sell it or into this depressed market, or should I hold on to it and rent it? Now, renting it, of course, is it would give me some money, and in fact it would save me a little bit more. Here, let me go to the whiteboard here. Anyway, if I got $55,000 after the taxes and real estate commission, I would be very lucky to get that. Basically, if I took that and dumped it into the mortgage, and plus I'd get a nice little tax deduction because of the loss I would take on the value of the condo, 73 minus 55,000. That's a bit, and I could take that off my taxes. But then basically that would save me about $400 a month if I have a 3.5% mortgage over 15 years. But if I rented it, I'd probably get about $900, maybe $975, and that's under market. I want to rent it under market so I can get a really good renter and be kind of selective. But basically, I might clear after the mortgage, after the property taxes, homeowners association dues, and taxes on the income, I'd probably clear about $500 a month. Now, that's not including upkeep of this place. I'd still have to come back every year or two and possibly throw a new carpet in, paint, do some plumbing work, and it would be kind of a hassle, but it would possibly, if I had it rented all the time, it would give me about $500 a month. So basically these are just about even. And then if I cleared $500 a month and we had like a devaluation of the dollar, basically I might be able to get more than $55,000 out of it. Plus we had a slight revival of industry in this area. So we might see a little more jobs too. So basically my plan is to I'm just going to move first because I can easily afford it, and then get settled into the new place and then decide whether I want to sell or rent. And when I get my new place, I think I'll get a couple of roommates. I want to have I want at least a 3-bedroom place, possibly with a big garage or a basement. And I want to get a couple of roommates who are into organic gardening and permaculture, or possibly prepping as well, they're pretty related these days. And a lot of preppers are into permaculture, and a lot of permaculturists talk about shit hitting the fan. So it's almost as if the two big movements of hippie organic gardening and gun-toting preppers are sort of converging into sort of a closer association. So anyway, I could quite possibly get that. And say 300 or 250 or 300 a month, that's pretty good rent for a room for single people like me. So heck, I'd probably rent in a place like this if I had the chance. So basically, but I haven't really seen anything quite like what I want to provide as far as the living experience and the gardening and the atmosphere, basically. Oh, I was just throwing this thing together, and I don't think I really clarified something. If I have, you see, the thing with the condo, right? If I sell it, then it's gone, right? And I save about $400 a month on the mortgage, if that. But if I keep it, I probably clear about $500 a month, and then basically I would also then still own the condo. Now, you know the old saying among preppers, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. If you have a house that has a big mortgage on it, and you could conceivably lose it if the shit really hit the fan and Argentina-style economic collapse hits the U.S., and if then they start seizing assets, and conceivably I could then lose my home, right? And if I did, I would then have a backup, because then as soon as the lease expired on the renter, you know, it's all unpleasant and everything, but I could then move in here, you know, and it's paid off. But also it would be an asset. I might be able to bargain it for something, but it would just be an asset. Whereas, but it would also come at the price of having to give up that $500 a month. No, it would be an asset that would come at the price of having that $400 a month savings on my mortgage, because if I had $55,000 dumped right into the mortgage, then I would pay off the house about 2 years early, right? Because basically, if I had $500 a month, and if I had $600, that's about $1,100 a month, and then that would probably be the full house payment on the house that I plan to buy, right? And then that would give me basically free housing almost, and except for the effort of managing it, but it would be outside the economy, and I would have the full force of my income to concentrate on knocking that mortgage down. I could knock $2,000 a month off that mortgage, and then $24,000 a year. Every 2 years, I'd be knocking $50,000 off the mortgage, and at that rate, I could pay that house off in possibly 6 years, right? Before I'm 55, I could be mortgage free again, and then I would be in the last decade of my career or my working years, and I could then concentrate on acquiring more assets and getting myself set for basically what amounts to retirement, whatever it is. Because if I just took that money and dumped it into a mutual fund or something, trying to make money out of it on their terms, on their turf, basically I would be at a vast disadvantage. And right about the time it was time to collect my first retirement pay, that would be when currency devaluation and companies would go bankrupt, and then suddenly I'd look at my portfolio and find that I didn't have much in it. My income and my assets would be WorldCommed and Enron into oblivion, and some wealthy person would be laughing and toasting his buddies on his yacht. So, but if I save my money in assets instead, or at least mostly in assets like housing, rental housing, income generating properties that are paid for, and infrastructure such as gardens and ponds and greenhouse and solar panels and rain catch, and if I have all of that, then those things that I need to survive would then be provided by the homestead, and some of the income would be provided by renters, and then I would have a chance at a comfortable retirement, puttering away in my garden until the end. So, but it would be, you know, it's not a bad life. So that's the plan, and but the thing is, 2 is 1, 1 is none. If I rent the condo, I would have a backup, right? Just like when I'm driving my car and I have the solo wheel in the trunk, this is also a backup, because if the car dies, I can then just jump on that thing and go 11 miles if I needed to. So I'm still not fully decided whether or not I want to sell or rent. But first thing I need to do before I really decide either way is get my house that I want and basically get settled, and then I'll decide whether or not, you know, I'll reanalyze it with the economic conditions that exist in the time that I am talking about, after I've moved in and I'm settled, and then I'll decide. So, okay, and back to the video. So anyway, what I want my place to have is to have at least one south-facing wall, and I want to basically build a greenhouse, right? And this is going to be a lean-to greenhouse with a opaque roof, which is insulated to keep that hot summer sun out, and it will also have a glass wall in the facing south, so that it'll get even the overcast light of winter is able to grow plants. So basically that's part of it. Then I'll have some solar gain in here, but even if we have a sunny day, even in the winter time, I plan to have that double pane, of course, but basically it can get pretty darn hot in here, right? And when it does, I'll have a thermostat on the ceiling, and if it reaches a certain temperature, like maybe 85 or whatever I set it at, this fan here will activate, right? And then it'll start drawing that hot air up into this ductwork, and there'll be multiple of these ducts spaced at about maybe 4 or 5 feet, and then they will go down into the ground. Now let's basically, the house is here, and of course I drew it wrong. I'm going to have to dig the hole farther away from the foundation of the house. I don't want my house to fall into the hole. That's the opposite of prepping. Because if I'm in the hole, you know, being a survivalist, you don't want the dirt to come in and bury you alive. Okay, but anyway, what you do is you start out by digging this big 6-foot deep hole all along the footprint of your greenhouse, right? And then you throw a pond liner down in here and make sure it's tamped down pretty good all the way around, and it's able to keep water transferring to a minimum, right? Then you throw dirt and gravel and stuff like that in here, and then throw another pond liner down and start filling up around as dirt on the inside and on the outside as you continue up, and you have like 2 layers of pond liner, right? So this whole area here is this giant thermal mass, as well as what's in here, and it will collect heat, a lot of it, a huge titanic amount of heat, and it will then release it throughout the night, right? So anyway, this thing will be going, this fan, and it'll be blowing that super hot air down into the ground, and it will do a loop and then come out the other side, and then it will be transferring the excess heat, which is what is one of the big downfalls of greenhouses. A lot of greenhouses have little doors and things that open up and vent that air to the outside, the hot air, which is one idea, but the thing is, it's lost. That heat is then lost, but then when the winter comes, when it starts getting seriously cold, they have to put a heater or something in there to keep their plants from freezing. But the thing is, I would have a thermostat up here, temperature sensor, and if it reaches, like, say, at a certain temperature, it'll start heating that thermal mass up and storing that energy for later use. And then overnight in the wintertime, if it's really cold, it's quite possible that it could drop close to freezing or even freezing here, and it could quite possibly kill my plants, right? Now, what happens then is when the temperature drops down to a certain point, the fan comes on again, and it starts in reverse, right? It starts drawing the cold air out of the bottom of the greenhouse, right, and pumping it back in the top. And then, of course, I'd probably have a ceiling fan as well that would sort of stir up the air. And also, in the wintertime, all houses have a certain amount of insulation that fails, and some of the excess heat from the house would transfer into the greenhouse as well. So then, also in the wintertime, a handy thing is to have a pool, or a reflecting pool, a shallow pool, maybe 2 feet deep, outside of the greenhouse. And in the wintertime, the sun comes down, bounces, goes right into your greenhouse, right? And but in the summertime, that same hot summer heat is coming from, like, right straight up, and then it goes down and bounces at a shallower angle, and then takes off harmlessly into outer space. So, and also, I'm going to strongly considering adding another feature to the greenhouse, and that is to basically have fish in here. I know I can't draw. Okay, and then basically these fish will generate excess nitrogen because they drop ammonia into the water. And then if you don't take care of that ammonia and do something with it, you can have algae blooms and all kinds of problems in your pool, right? But so instead, I would take that water and pull it into the greenhouse and run it through the planters. And that would basically, and then they would overflow, and the planters would pull the nitrogen out of the water, and then the water that's now free of the nitrogen would drop back into the pool, and I would have it up in the air a little bit so that it falls in as sort of a stream, oxygenating the water, right? And at night, I would have a little light sensor, and at night, a little LED, just a tiny little white LED would be all it would take, and I would have it suspended a few inches above the water, and then mosquitoes and moths, you know, those squash vine borer moths and squash bug moths, they would make excellent fish food, and they would just drop right into the water, and the fish would chow down, right? Turn those moths into nitrogen, which would go up into your planters. So basically, this is going to be one of my earlier projects, but I'm going to do this in parallel with some things like rain catch on the from the roof, and various other sort of prepper, eco, self-sufficient projects, basically. So currently, while a lot of people are going to sleep and basically sort of sort of slacking off and maybe finding other things to do and whatnot. Now, I spent a little money and on that and a few other things, but basically my main focus still is getting that place established so that I can get parallel lines of supply going, garden, fruit trees, deep freezer, solar panels, get all of those things so that I am more self-sufficient. The more self-sufficient you are, the less you have to buy, obviously. So basically, if you have the infrastructure in your house to provide you with food and water and heat and basically energy, and it can be provided for you on the homestead, then you are less dependent on the economy and less dependent on government regulations, less dependent on pretty much everything. And then you, even though freedom is being closed down systematically in this country, if you have things like this set up, you will be more free than if you didn't have all this stuff, right? And the knowledge is also very critical too. If you have the knowledge, you can recreate a lot of things that you really struggled to create the first time. So I want fruit trees, I want a pond or two, I want gardens, raised beds, hugelkultur beds. I want basically, I want the house to have a foundation, a concrete foundation, poured concrete, just like what we got right here. And that way I can build a rocket mass heater right on the ground floor and have a big thermal mass and everything, and then basically have a lot of heat generated just from things that I collect around the property, like cutting and trimming trees and Jerusalem artichoke stalks and things like that are just dry, and debris that you pick up on the road, pallets that are thrown away at work. You could pick that stuff, unload it in the truck and take it home. Pallets make excellent firewood for a rocket mass heater. And basically I want to be able to have as much self-sufficiency as possible. Then of course everything I grow on the property and everything my roommates grow as well, because I plan on assigning, giving them as much of the property that they can use productively. I'll start off with a smaller section, and then if they make it work, we'll increase from there. So basically, and everything produced on the property would go right back into the kitchen, and that would of course save the roommates money as well as myself. So that's the plan. And even though, yes, I have slacked off rather dramatically on my videos, my prepping and my planning and my the project to have greater freedom in my life continues. And I'm hoping it does for you too. If you have any input, I'd like to hear it. What are you doing? Or have you slacked off a little bit, or have you continued prepping, or have you changed gears as I have? Instead of a sudden shit hit the fan prepping focus, have you, as I have, changed to a more long-term outlook? So yeah, leave the comments in the comments section. I would love to hear it. Later.